see how it kind of plays out.
And the discard obviously is going to be integral in this matchup for Rivera. We'll see how Counter Magic plays out. We'll see who draws more cards here as one player has Underworld Connections, the other one has Revelation and some more cantripping. And we are underway with a Temple of Deceit from Rivera and Azorius Guildgate from Phillips.
So, yeah, Tim has the Temple, which helps him scry a little bit. Steven doesn't have access to red yet, but again, he doesn't really need it. There's only 2 copies of Counterflux in his main deck that really require red, so...
And don't forget the other thing, too, here, is you're going to see a Thoughtseize from Rivera, is that every time Rivera draws a removal spell, for the most part, it's going to be quite bad. As here's a Thoughtseize, you're going to show you a Jace, a Azorius Charm, a Divination, and a couple lands, Temple of Triumph, and Hollow Fountain.
Yeah, that's a part of the reason why you also think blue-white control has a little bit of an advantage, because game 1, there are a lot more dead cards in the mono-black deck than there are in the blue-white control deck. Mono-black, it's a very powerful deck, but it does require it to play some cards that aren't optimal in certain matchups. Obviously, Underworld Connection is not great against Beatdown. Obviously, cards like Devour Flesh aren't good against Control. Your goal is, after board, you can bring in the optimal 60 cards you need, but game 1 can be a struggle sometimes if you don't draw the right combination of cards.
Divination going to be cast here for Phillips. I'm going to draw a couple of cards and just pass the turn back to Rivera. We'll see if Rivera has anything interesting to do on turn 3 as he draws another copy of Devour Flesh.
And that's the other thing about Steven's deck that I like. He has 4 copies of Divination, so he can continue to make his land drops and keep drawing into answers to Tim's threats.
Yeah, I never thought Divination would see as much play as it currently is. He's going to start off his turn with a Temple of Triumph and a Scribe, but it really is kind of glue that it's the kind of the glue that holds this deck together. Here's another Divination that's going to resolve.
Yeah, because it gives the deck velocity. It allows it to continue to make its land drops and keep cycling through the relevant cards, like counter spells when you need them, along with the Planeswalkers.
Hero's Downfall, the draw from Rivera. He's just going to pass the turn back. Another Temple of Triumph here from Phillips.
And this is exactly the kind of game Steven wants to play. He wants to play this game where he doesn't have to interact early on with Tim. Tim's going to try to do things later in the game, and Steven can kind of overwhelm him with Planeswalkers later on.
Here's a Desecration Demon. We'll see if this is going to resolve, if Phillips really even cares about the big 6/6 flyer.
Yeah, Steven does have Azorius Charm as a way to handle it. I think he might have a Supreme Verdict in his hand as well. So plenty of answers to the to that Desecration Demon. He also just drew a Quicken. Quicken, one of those cards that has been made popular by, I believe, Andrew Cuneo, because it allows you to cast Divination at instant speed. Also allows you to cast Supreme Verdict at instant speed, which can catch a lot of beatdown players off guard. So let's see here. We are going to see a Quicken. It cycles. Now he can cast any sorceries he wants.
And he is going to cast a Supreme Verdict to take care of the Desecration Demon.
Very, very good there. So Supreme Verdict takes out Desecration Demon at instant speed, and now Steven can cast an Elixir on his turn. That's his pseudo win condition for his deck.
It pains me to say that's a win condition for a deck, but even though it's actually true. It is absolutely painful.
Thank you, Andrew Cuneo, for
really
making that a win condition in Standard.
I'm telling you, Cuneo was probably just saddled up with that in the in the quarterfinals, just ear to ear grin.
Ear to ear grin.
Now watching those players just battle it out, revelating and just doing nothing basically.
So Tim Rivera draws a Freaka's Cure, which is really, really bad in this matchup. And again, guys, kind of goes to show you how many dead cards he has against Control game 1.
Yeah, doesn't have a ton of Freaka's Cures in his deck, but I think he only has one in his deck list. But yeah, he drew that one. And
so it looks like he has a Freaka's Cure. He also has the Devour Flesh, and here's a giant Sphinx of Revelation. Yeah. So here is where it gets really, really backbreaking for Tim.
I really think just in this matchup, game 1 is just incredibly difficult for Tim to be able to win. Desecration Demon is going to come down. Phillips is going to have an answer to it because he just drew a bunch of cards. Probably doesn't really care about it very much. There's a Mutavault for his turn. But I really think, as you mentioned, after Sideboard, he's able to get the rubbish out of his deck and real cards into it.
Yeah, exactly. He does have options. Obviously he can theoretically win game 1s, but in general, you'd think the blue-white deck has a little bit of an edge just because it has a lot of card draw, and Tim has a lot more dead cards in his deck game 1 in this matchup.
Elspeth's going to come down. Minus is going to take care of the Desecration Demon. Nightfell Spectre is the draw here for Rivera.
So let's see here. It looks like he has a Thoughtseize. I believe he also might have a Hero's Downfall. So Tim likely has at least one counterspell. He's representing it with the 3 mana up. Does he have 2, though?
See a Syncopate. And Azorius Charm, into Attention Sphere, Supreme Verdict, a Jace, a Mutavault, and a Plane. So actually no counterspell.
So he has a Syncopate, which could stop. No, it wouldn't even be able to stop the Hero's Downfall. So Tim could decide to just take the Jace here and Hero's Downfall the Elspeth.
Yeah, when I say no counterspell, I mean not a hard counter.
Yeah,
actually
not a
take care
hard
of
counter.
Hero's Downfall.
Yeah, Syncopate can get cast, but it can only get cast for 2, and Tim can still, with 5 mana up, can cast Hero's Downfall and play around that Syncopate. So let's see what Tim decides to do. Obviously, Detention Sphere, Azorius Charm, not major concerns right now. Jace, obviously something he has to be worried about. So it looks like that is what he's going to do. He's going to take that Jace, and then if he does have a Hero's Downfall, I expect it to come after that Elspeth right now.
And it is. So that's going to go bye-bye, which means Elixir is going to have to put it back into the deck at some point here so that Phillips can actually win.
Yeah, so we're going to see a cycle Azorius Charm here to draw a little more cards. And like you said, he still has that Elixir, so the Elspeth isn't gone forever necessarily.
Island the draw here for Phillips this turn.
He also has a Mutavault in his hand, which he can play. Gives him a way to start pressuring Tim later on in the game if he chooses, but it looks like he's just going to play a Steam Vent and pass the turn back.
Yeah, I can't imagine that he's going to do too much. I don't think he's going to take any risks. You know, he knows that Rivera has a lot of removal in his deck, so his Mutavaults probably aren't going to live between, you know, Devour Flesh and Freakish Cure and all the other nonsense that Mono Black has to kill creatures. And he's just going to rely on Elspeth to get the job done. Elixir's going to shuffle everything back in right now because he wants to get back to that Elspeth.
Yeah, so Steven's shuffling everything back in. I wonder if he's going to cycle Azorius Charm here to try to draw a card and use the Detention Sphere on the Night Veil Spectre, or is he going to try to hold on to that Azorius Charm as a way to deal with any of other Tim's threats? I expect a cycle here, though. I just think there's too many good cards that Steven can draw in this situation.
Yeah, especially with Detention Sphere, you just kind of want to save for an Underworld Connections where, you know, they get to get one draw off it, but no more after that.
Yeah, so it looks like Steven did hold on to that Azorius Charm. Doesn't feel like he needs to cycle it just yet, and he plays a Temple and scries the card to the bottom of his library.
There's a Verdict, so he does just trade one for one.
So he did have the Supreme Verdict in his hand, so that's correct. So he can cast that and deal with the Night Veil Spectre that way. So he's going to pass back to Tim. Let's see what Tim decides to do in his turn. He does have those. He has the Freakish Cure in his hand and a Devour Flesh. I believe he might have a Grey Merchant as well. That might be his last threat, though.
Here's a Temple for Rivera. He's going to take a look at the top card of his deck, decide what he wants to do with it, and maybe establish that Grey Merchant that is hiding out in his hand, even though it would be for just a lowly drain of 2.
You always hate it when your opponent keeps the card on top. You're always hoping for a scry to the bottom.
It's never the best feeling, that's for sure.
Wow, so yeah, it looks like Tim has double Devour Flesh, Freakish Cure. So really only one relevant card in this matchup in his hand, and it comes into play in Grey Merchant, draining Steven of 2.
Yeah, and doesn't really even do very much here. Just going to put Steven down to his original life total, which is 20.
Ooh, and there's a good draw from Steven. He draws a Jace, Architect of Thought. So we could see a Jace activation here. And he still has an Azorius Charm and a Detention Sphere as a way to deal with the creature in play. There are no Mutavaults on Tim's side of the board. So that's good news for Steven because it's another card that can't pressure the Jace. Generally, generally, I was talking to BBD and Shahar about how they like to use Jace in this particular matchup, and they had two different opinions. Shahar always likes to uptick Jace in this matchup, whereas BBD always likes to just downtick it and get the cards, even if there are creatures in play. So it looks like Steven's going in BBD's direction. He's downticking it and just going for the cards. He reveals a Counterflux, a Quicken, and a Plane. So interesting decision here. It looks like it's going to be Counterflux and Quicken, basically split up in the land, kind of irrelevant at this point. But
I like minusing Jace a lot in this matchup just because I basically look at it as a glorified divination, potentially 2 divinations if things break the way that I want it to. I just want as many cards as possible, just get through my deck as fast as I can, find Revelations, do that, find Elspeth to win the game, and just move on from there because the +1 isn't really doing a ton in my opinion.
Yeah, I think most players would agree with you. Shahar kind of felt that generally he says he has to he'll put them on a Hero's Downfall or no. And if they don't have it, he thinks the uptick is actually valuable against a lot of their deck, particularly the Mutavault, which is probably the most effective card in their deck against the control decks in general. But I'm with you. I think the fact that they can have a Hero's Downfall and just you can get no value out of your Jace, I think is just too much of a detriment to not use it.
Thoughtseize the draw here from Rivera this turn. The problem for Rivera, as he's going to start by attacking the Grey Merchant, is that his Thoughtseize isn't really pushing anything through. You know, normally you start with a Thoughtseize so that you can resolve a more relevant spell, but it's not actually taking care of anything, as Freakish Cure is going to shoot down a Mutavault.
So, yep, we're going to have looks like Mutavault's going to want to just jump in front of a Grey Merchant here. Interesting, pretty aggressive play by Steven. He's going to basically losing both his Mutavaults here and exposing himself to Mutavaults down the road. But I guess and he basically turns on all of Rivera's removal here. So I'm surprised Steven just didn't use his Azorius Charm, but
I think the more important thing that's happening here, too, is that not only are 2 Mutavaults dying, but that means that 2 lands are getting killed. And look, he's going to counterflex this?
yeah, this is a pretty interesting play here from Steven because he's basically turning on all of the removal and he's using counter spells on them. Not only are Tim's removal spells live now, but suddenly he's using them to actually bait out counter spells. So pretty good turn. I think Tim has to be happy with the way this is kind of going for him.
Yeah, I mean, these 3 dead cards in Sand actually got turned on in some fashion here, finally.
Yeah.
And we're picking a fight over these Mutavaults that, again, he's actually just going to let this die, and Devour Flesh is going to take care of that, too. Yeah, so, and now Jace is going to bite the dust as well. So I don't understand the thought process there on Phillips' side of having a battle over those Mutavaults instead of just either A, letting Jace die, B, taking Jace up so Grey Merchant can kill it, or C, just Azorius charming the Grey Merchant, as you mentioned.
Or just Detention Sphering it. You still have the Detention Sphere. Yeah, it looks like Steven just doesn't have... I think he's all out of card draw, too, but thankfully he's had a lot of life, so it's not like he's under too much pressure.
Well, he drew the glue.
Oh, there you go.
He drew the glue that holds it together. Divination.
Divination off the top there for Steven. Looks like he drew a Supreme Verdict and Azorius Charm, so Supreme Verdict likely to get cast, but nope, he's going to pass.
Yeah, I mean, he's sitting at 20. I don't think he needs a trade at this point. Hero's Downfall the draw here for Rivera.
Well, I think the concern would be if Tim does have a Thoughtseize, I think probably your least efficient removal spell is Supreme Verdict. So if I get a chance to cast it, I like to. It's unlikely Tim's going to commit too much more to the board. If he plays like a Mutavault, all of a sudden you're under a much bigger clock. So I think he's eventually going to cast Supreme Verdict, so I'd rather just do it right away.
Eventually is now.
Yeah, so Tim does cast Supreme Verdict, and now Tim has no threats in play now. It looks like he drew a land for the turn. I think he might have another a Hero's Downfall in his hand.
Yeah, he's got a Hero's Downfall and 2 copies of Thoughtseize in his hand right now, but he's not casting Thoughtseize because he doesn't have a reason to, because, again, Thoughtseize isn't going to, clear the path for anything, as a Ratchet Bomb is going to come into play here for Phillips, his one that he has main deck.
Yeah, I like not casting the Thoughtseize because he has to actually try to force something through. So whether or not he wants to resolve a threat or make sure his Hero's Downfall resolves in order to deal with the potential Planeswalker down the line. So it looks like he's going to cast it now because he did draw a Night Veil Spectre and he wants that card to resolve.
We'll see if a large Syncopate is going to get cast here from Phillips. He also has a Counterflux in his hand too that he can defend himself with. Yeah,
I like just I like just casting the Counterflux here.
You see, it's just going to be a large Syncopate, which actually kind of plays in exactly what Rivera wants, which is sure you take care of my Thoughtseize, which is going to force him a Night Veil Spectre. And you see him counting all of his mana. So now here's the big Syncopate, and I'm sure Rivera's going to say that's fine.
Yeah, so Rivera's fine with that. It does the same job that it was going to do. It allows the Night Veil Spectre to resolve. So even though he doesn't get to see Steven's hand, I think he's okay with that. Yeah, well, he does have a second Thoughtseize.
Yeah, he's got a backup Thoughtseize.
So pretty much a great scenario here for Tim. Tim with 2 copies of the Detention Sphere here and a Supreme Verdict. So he has plenty of answers to creatures that now I guess he just has to take the Counterflux here and resign himself to know that the Spectre is likely not going to hit.
Yeah, I mean, his next couple of things are going to die. Between the Ratchet Bomb, Double Sphere, and a Verdict, his next couple of threats are going to end up biting the dust here. If you're Rivera, you're just hoping to fade a Revelation from your opponent the entire time.
I still kind of like taking the Detention... I like taking the Detention Sphere there, just because if you draw... I think it's more likely... you can maybe trick Steven into casting a Detention Sphere to deal with the Night Veil Spectre as opposed to Supreme Verdict. And if that's the case, then maybe you can use Underworld Connections later down the line, if you draw another Thoughtseize. But either way, it doesn't look like it's going to matter because Steven did draw a Jace Architect of Thought, and that is going to reveal an Elspeth and 2 cards that probably aren't going to matter.
Yeah, and Azorius Charm and Detention Sphere. Part of the reason I actually like taking the Counterflux on Rivera's side is just for this reason that now that Elspeth has shown up, he can't defend it against a Hero's Downfall.
That's true.
The problem, of course, is that, Phillips will eventually find an Elixir, shuffle it back in, do this dance again, because this is the second time that the Singleton Elspeth has shown up this game. So, again, this is part of the deck design by Andrew Cuneo of just, you can kill my Elspeth, but you can't kill it infinite times, and I can keep getting it infinite times.
Yeah, so I think you have to take Elspeth, but I don't know if you cast it this turn. With Tim casting 3 Thoughtseizes, I think it's safe in your hand. I would just deal with the Night Veil Spectre, so make sure you can get a couple more Jace activations.
Sure. I can certainly say that. I mean, either via D-Sphere or either via Verdict. just some sort of removal spell.
Yeah, I would use the Verdict here. Maximize your mana. I feel like I'm with you. You have to be a little concerned about losing an Elspeth to a Hero's Downfall, especially if you don't need to.
Yep.
Like, there's really no rush for you to cast anything. So
Verdict going to take care of the Spectre, pass the turn back. Rivera's going to draw his card for the turn. He draws another Nightveil Spectre. Doesn't really change him much here, and it doesn't change much, in this game. He's just going to play that and pass the turn back. Bomb's going to tick up to 2. Phillips is going to untap all of those lands. We might see him activate Jace here to start his turn.
yeah, I think I still like upticking Jace. I think you want to keep it in play, and I think I would just Attention Sphere the Nightveil Spectre. But it looks like he just wants to cash it in for 3 cards here. Let's see what he gets. 2 lands and a Sphinx of Revelation, or should I say a Sphinx of Revelation and 2 irrelevant cards.
Yeah, so those are going to go on the bottom. Revelation's obviously going to go to the grip, as Phillips has a ton of lands, so he can resolve a big Revelation. That's what he's going to do on this following turn.
Yeah, I think he's okay with getting hit by Nightveil Spectre.
Yeah, okay, I'll go to 16.
I'll give you 1 card that you might not even be able to cast.
The only way this goes like pretty bad, I think, is does that go bad if it's exactly Elixir?
It is.
And I guess Dissolve's actually kind of a beating.
He has 2 Temples. Wow.
Yeah.
He has 2 Temples of Deceit in play, so he could actually cast that Dissolve. But Steven is going to be able to uptick that Ratchet Bomb, so that's no longer an issue. But it did stop Steven from casting the Sphinx Revelation for a turn.
So Bomb goes up to 3, takes care of the Spectre, so Dissolve can't be cast. Rivera's going to draw cards, another copies of Hero's Downfall. He does have an Underworld Connections in his hand that he's going to deploy now. And he is just going to pass the turn back and not start by drawing a card, as we're going to see a pretty large Revelation. Not sure for how much, but that's going to be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Must be nice to just be able to rev for how much you want to with like no repercussions, because you have Elixir in your deck, so you can just play Elixir, discard all the cards, and shuffle them back in, and no threat of decking yourself.
Never have to worry about running out of cards. Just tap everything. Just tap everything and draw everything. Draw the world.
Do whatever you want.
So Tim drew his card draw spell, unfortunately slightly outmatched by Steven's.
One of these is better than the other.
So let's see what Steven wants to do this turn. He drew another Sphinx's Revelation. He did draw that Elixir, so Elixir is likely to come down now. Does he want to use the Detentions around the Underworld Connections to make sure that things don't get a little too crazy on Tim's side of the board, or does he just not care?
I would want to take care of Connections. Again, I just want to put my opponent in a submission. Don't let them do anything. Take care of that. I've got a bunch of Attention Spheres. Here's an Elspeth that's going to end up dying to a Hero's Downfall, we believe. Don't know how much counter magic Phillips drew, but he's going to make a couple of tokens.
Yeah, again, I'm not sure he needed to cast the Elspeth just yet. If he has 2 counterspells, then I think it's okay, but I'm not sure what he has in his hand. I know he has at least 1 Dissolve, I believe. Now it looks like we're going to, at the end of Steven's turns, Tim is going to draw a card for the turn. Likely not going to try to cast the Hero's Downfall now, just because he doesn't want to expose himself to Syncopate, I don't think. So Steven is just going to be allowed to discard down to 7. He is going to have multiple Revelations in his hand. It looks like he just has 1 Dissolve. Not sure he has another hard counterspell.
I want to see what he's going to be discarding here, which is like a Verdict and a handful of lands and stuff that really doesn't matter at this point. And if it does, again, he can shuffle it back in. It's Desecration Demon. It's a draw for Rivera.
Yeah, so let's see here. Rivera drew the Desecration Demon for turn. He's going to draw another card off of the Underworld Connections, which is a second Underworld Connections. So Hero's Downfall will attempt to be cast on the Elspeth. Steven does have a Dissolve, so Dissolve is on the stack now. Hero's Downfall will get countered, and he scries the card down to the bottom of his library.
And now here's another Hero's Downfall. And Syncopate for... He has enough mana to Syncopate for 2.
So he does have a Syncopate. So, yep, Syncopate for 2, and Elspeth will stay, and Tim just concedes the game. So Steven Phillips, on the power of Sphinx's Revelation, wins Game 1, defeating Tim Rivera, and moving on to the second game now. And Tim's deck gets a lot better now, He obviously he had those dead cards, Devour Flesh, Pharika's Cure, so he's going to be able to board in a lot more cards, like 4 copies of Duress, 3 Lifebane Zombies, and 1 extra copy of Arabos, God of the Dam. Yeah,
we'll take a look at Steven Phillips' sideboard in just a moment here, but it is trivia time, so of course get your Twitters open and ready. Make sure you hashtag your answer with the hashtag of SCG Premium, and again, we'll announce the winner at the conclusion of our finals match here between Rivera and Phillips. As Osip, I will let you ask the question.
Okay, so the trivia question is, where are we in Week 1 of 2014? Where is the Star City Game Open Series going to be in Week 1 of 2014? It was announced several times throughout the weekend. There's also a website called StarCityGames.com, which might have that information.
Yeah.
So look it up and tweet us the answer. Make sure you add hashtag SCG Premium, and you can win a year.
The
Of,
full year.
A full year of Star City Games Premium. So tweet us your answers at SCG Live, hashtag SCG Premium. Where are we going to be the week 1 of 2014?
All right, we'll cut back to our match right now. We've already addressed what Rivera can bring in on his side. Stephen Phillips, game 1 looked pretty easy. He's got access to a Blind Obedience, a Pithing Needle, a Wear and Tear, or just a singleton copy of Shock, a couple copies of Last Breath, 3 Gainsay, a Counterflux, a Negate, a Jason, 3 copies of Fiend Slayer Paladin. So pretty mixed sideboard here for the blue-white-red control player. Of these cards, I mean, I actually kind of like Last Breath because it takes care of Nightveil Spectre, can also take care of Pack Rat, also deals with Mutavault. So a lot of options there for Last Breath in this matchup. Kind of like Counterflux because counterspells are okay in this matchup, but we also know that Rivera has access to 4 Duress and 4 Thoughtseize after sideboard, so how good is a 3-mana counterspell in the face of those discard spells? Probably not very. Negate's certainly okay. Jace Memory Depth can be a card drawing engine. Python Needle, of course, is going to come in and take care of the land that Underworld Connections is enchanting. Can also take care of Arabos in this matchup as well. So a lot of options here for Stephen Phillips, but Rivera, you know, he's got to board into cards that actually do something, and Duress is obviously a good start.
Yeah, he's got the 4 copies of Devour Flesh and the 1 Freakus Cure they can board out. He also has a couple of copies of Pack Rat that he can likely board out. Not that great in this matchup. So, you know, that's 7 cards I could see him bringing out. And again, he wants to bring in those 4 copies of Duress. I think he wants to bring in 3 copies of Lifebane Zombie, just because I think it's a little bit better than Pack Rat in this matchup. At the same time, he also has 1 copy of Arabos that I think he wants to bring in. So maybe he might cut 1 Hero's Downfall, just because even though it's good at getting rid of Planeswalkers, there's really not that many. Obviously, there's Elspeth, Sun's Champion, but that's really the only profitable exchange that you have with Hero's Downfall. There's really no creatures that you can be able to go after, and having to go after a Jace Architect after they've already used it, again, you're going to be behind on cards there. So I think Hero's Downfall, you could probably cut 1 of those, along with the 4 Devour Flesh, 1 Freakus Cure, and 2 Pack Rats to bring in the 8 cards, like in 4 Duress, 3 Lifebane Zombie, and 1 extra copy of Arabos.
Okay. Well, you see both players are shuffling up here. Don't forget that as soon as this tournament's over, of course, we'll announce the winner of our 12 months of premium. We'll do a winner's interview on the sideboard, and then we're going to be taking a short break and then moving into invitational coverage. Well, we'll sit down with each player who made top 8, kind of get their perspective on how their tournament went and how they're preparing for the top 8 with Glenn and Ruben in the sideboard. And then we're going to start the coverage of that. The quarterfinals, again, will give away 3 months of premium. The semifinals will give away 6 months, and the finals will give away 12 months of premium. And we'll have a winner of $10,000, a huge novelty check, a trophy, and a new Star City Games token will be worked on as well. So a lot of exciting stuff coming up here over the course of Sunday. Can't forget about the Legacy Open that's taking place behind us as well.
Yeah, I've heard. I was talking to some of the invitational top 8 competitors, and there are some interesting ideas for tokens out there.
What you got?
One of the competitors, they're really hoping to get a Pack Rat token. I've heard Kiki Jiki tokens, a Restoration Angel Kiki Jiki token, Deceiver Exarch tokens. I'm not sure how that's going to work, but a lot of interesting ideas there. I think the players really like getting their image. After seeing like the Jerry Thompson Dark Depths token and the Brad Nelson token, I think just the artwork is so cool. Like getting to have you know, your own token, but really having that artwork. If I had my own artwork like that, I'd want it framed even. It's so, like, some of the artwork there is just so cool. So some interesting ideas from the competitors. I'm not going to tell you which of the top 8 really want a Pack Rat token.
Brian.
But yeah.
Brian, excuse me.
But there could potentially be a Star Rat token in the future. Well, who knows? But
well, thank goodness for that.
Yeah,
everyone's favorite card.
People need it. We definitely need Star Rat tokens nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, we need that. We need We need the 1/0 elemental token for Master of Waves. There are a lot of tokens that we need in Magic. Soldier token for Elspeth. You get a lot of play off of that. I mean, there are soldier tokens that do exist. We have some, but certainly just a beautiful soldier token for Elspeth would be really, really nice.
Well, we have giant baiting tokens now. So.
Oh, thank goodness. Thank you, Huey.
So both players shuffled and presented, and they're looking at their 7 cards hands and seeing if they're okay with them. Tim Rivera will keep. Stephen Phillips will also keep. So Tim Rivera leads off with a Swamp and a pass. Stephen Phillips has just an Azorius Guildgate for the turn. Looks like Rivera drew a Thoughtseize here. Let's see if he wants to use it now, or does he want to wait a little bit? Nope, he will use it.
All right, let's take a look at the grip. It's an Azorius Charm.
Azorius Charm, 2 Detention Spheres, and a Sphinx of Revelation. So Sphinx of Revelation likely going to get taken here. And interesting that Tim decided to use the Thoughtseize. I have seen some players use the Thoughtseize a little later down the line. You get a little more information, and generally against a deck like Blue-White Control, you don't really need to Thoughtseize anything away too quickly. There's not much that Steven can do on turn 2 or turn 3 that you're afraid of. But again, maybe if he has a Night Veil Spectre and he wants to set that up next turn. But and it looks like that's what he wants to do. So Tim does take a Sphinx of Revelation. He does have that Night Veil Spectre, but again, Steven does have plenty of answers to it.
So Revelation's going to go bye-bye here from Phillips' hand. He's going to play Azorius Guildgate and pass the turn back. Now, Rivera has a copy of Underworld Connections and Night Veil Spectre in his hand. I'm kind of curious to see which one he's going to deploy first, but I don't think he has
wow.
He doesn't have the third land. Wow.
So no third mana. He does have a Pack Rat, but again, Pack Rat's not really ideal in this matchup. We already saw, 2 copies of Detention Sphere in Steven's hand, so he has answers to it, and he is going to use it right away.
I think if you're Rivera, you're thrilled with that. Absolutely thrilled, even though, again, he draws an Arabos for the turn and not a third land, because, the Pack Rat isn't going to do a ton in this matchup, as you mentioned, as Phillips is going to play a Temple of Triumph and Scry. He's going to leave his card on top, but that's one less Detention Sphere you have to worry about on your Underworld Connections or your Night Veil Spectre.
Well, not only that, but Tim really couldn't attack there, knowing that Steven has an Azorius Charm. If he misses his land drop, then Steven likely is just going to Azorius Charm and make sure he doesn't get another land drop. So Steven does cycle that Azorius Charm, and now it looks like he likely has an answer by Night Veil Spectre. He does have that second Detention Sphere, but that means that your Underworld Connections will be free and clear. So I think Tim will be okay with that. Let's see, 4 mana.
Looks like a Jace, probably.
Oh, wow, Supreme Verdict, and it looks like it might see the that Elixir of Immortality.
All right, so things aren't going bad for Rivera. I think the big one is if he draws a land, and he does he deploy Arabos or does he deploy Connections? I
like the Connections because it lets you draw a card.
I guess he gets the option too with Desecration Demon too, especially because Phillips just uses Supreme Verdict to trade 1 for 1.
Yeah, so now if you can bait him to use that Detention Sphere on your Desecration Demon, then suddenly your Arabos and Connections look even better. So
one of the nice things too, from Rivera's side, if you're looking for positives, is that when he's playing against Steven Phillips' deck, with control, when you stumble against a control deck, they can really take advantage of you, never really let you catch up. But Phillips' deck doesn't have a lot of win conditions. It only has 1, so, you're just basically hoping, I hope he doesn't draw us 1 of Elspeth to close the door really quickly on this game, which he obviously hasn't done yet. Detention Sphere going to take care of Desecration Demon, which means basically Rivera's going to have time to draw back into this game.
Yeah, wow, a second Desecration Demon here. And Phillips basically not much else in his hand.
Seriously, I don't think he has anything.
Yeah, I think he might just have land. So I think he's going to regret using the Detention Sphere on that Pack Rat because really, there wasn't really much of a need to do that, and he would have been able to 2 for 1 with the Supreme Verdict. And again, I'm not even sure he needs to Detention Sphere the Desecration Demon there. I mean, he's not under that much pressure just yet. Maybe give yourself another turn, but either way,
he's about to be now.
Yeah, now he has no more removal in his hand, I don't think, and I don't think he even has any card draw. So let's see what he draws for the turn. He's up 5 life because of the Elixir Immortality. He's just going to play a land and pass for the turn. So despite missing a land drop early on, it looks like Tim's in not the worst shape right here.
Draws a Pack Rat for the turn, going to start by attacking for 6. So Phillips is going to go down to 17, and Rivera is going to play a Duress, and it's probably going to clear the path for that Underworld connection.
Yeah, interesting he did a post-combat Duress.
Just
not afraid of Azorius Charm, I guess. So.
Okay. Lifebane Zombie. So now he's got a real clock, and this forces Phillips to draw a Verdict.
Wow.
He does draw a Sphinx's Revelation.
Much better than Verdict.
Yeah, yeah.
So he draws a Sphinx of Revelation. Rivera I believe he has an Arabos and Underworld Connection left in his hand, so he still has a good play here.
He's going to start by attacking for 9.
And are we going to see the Arabos come down here? Arabos could be active pretty soon.
He better respond. Okay. He's going to respond with a Revelation for 5.
Yeah, so Revelation for 5 here. Let's see if Steven can get that Supreme Verdict in his hand.
Yeah, I mean, right now it's a situation where he needs Verdict. He needs Verdict right now on this turn.
Draws 6 cards. He does have it looks like a Quicken he drew. Not sure if he drew the...
This feels like
so it looks like it is. Yeah, he did draw the Verdict, but he has the Quicken, so maybe he doesn't want to cast it just yet.
Yeah, maybe he can catch him off guard. Maybe that's a little too cute. There's a Temple of Triumph.
Yeah, I don't think it's too cute. I mean, it's the same. It's effectively the same thing.
Okay.
I think he wants to cast Quicken to cycle anyway, so it's really no difference there. Maybe you can catch the Rivera off guard by overcommitting somehow, but
I think with the tapping of the 4-mana and the untapping it, I think that Tim knows that
yeah,
he has a that he has one in his
yeah,
hand.
he has to he's going to cast Quicken, draw a card, and then we're going to see that Supreme Verdict here. Wonder if he has a Divination as well. That would be huge for Steven.
Arabos is going to get removed from combat.
So yeah, the Lifebane Zombie and the Desecration Demon are going to die, and Rivera has a follow-up. He has a land, plus he has Underworld Connection, Lifebane Zombie. I wouldn't be surprised if he just plays Lifebane Zombie and activates Arabos.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good turn, honestly. Keeps his board full. He can also play Desecration Demon this turn, and then the following turn he can play Lifebane Zombie, as here's a Counterflux to counter that and pass the turn back. So he could have played Lifebane Zombie, activate the Devotion, and then get in for a lethal attack of 6 and 5.
Well, the thing is, he could do the same thing with Lifebane Zombie, and but he'll be able to draw a card off of Arabos this
Sure,
turn.
but I think the point here is that it wouldn't be a lethal attack if he plays Lifebane Zombie, because if he plays Desecration Demon, it resolves. And then plays Lifebane Zombie.
I
it's 6
agree,
and
but
5.
I think it's wishing for too much. I think you have to assume it's not going to be a lethal attack. Phillips has basically like 6 cards in his hand, so I think it's a little too aggressive of a play. I think you want to just kind of draw more cards here.
Okay, slow the pace of the game down a little
Yeah.
bit. So you see Jace is going to come down -2. Detention Sphere is going to come in and take care of Arabos. Jace is sitting at 3 counters. Phillips has a couple cards in his hand and some mana open.
So pretty good turn of events here for Steven. That Revelation basically changed everything for him. Lifebane Zombie is going to come down, not going to hit anything. You'll see a Detention Sphere and a Mutavault. So 2 good cards for Steven. And now a third land is going to come for Rivera. And I think Rivera just has an Underworld Connection in his hand left.
And he won't cast it right now.
He's not going to cast it. Doesn't want to
Phillips
play into Detention Sphere possibly. So
going to cash in Jace.
Cash and Jace just wants those cards.
Probably looking for Rev. There's a Wear and Tear to take care of the Underworld Connections again, and there's a Verdict along with an Island. So he's going to split the 2 and the 1. I actually kind of like this split right now.
Yeah, I like that card split a lot. It kind of now Steven has to kind of put him on. Steven has to think about whether or not he has an Underworld Connection in his hand. How important is that? He does have a Detention Sphere. It looks like he might have an Azorius Charm too for the Lifebane Zombie, but nope, he's just going to take the Supreme Verdict, and that's good news for Tim because now he will be able to get that Underworld Connection to resolve and start using it.
So take a draw. Mutavault is the draw here for Rivera. He's going to cast Underworld Connections on a Swamp and take a draw step.
So Rivera goes down to 17. He's going to draw another card here. And swings over, drops Steven to 8.
Takes that immediately instead of Azorius Charming. Temple Deceit's going to put the top card on the bottom, pass the turn back. And Azorius Charm's going to cycle. So it feels like to me he's just digging for Revelation.
Yeah, trying to get more Revelation or an Elspeth or another Jace. But it looks like he just drew 2 lands for the turn.
Yeah, I don't think he found a Revelation just yet. Obviously, Revelation is going to be the backbreaker if he does find it. There's a Hallowed Fountain. I think we're probably going to see the Detention Sphere. But what do you target with the sphere here?
The thing is, though, yeah, he's going to go after the Underworld Connections, and he has a Supreme Verdict, so he could go after the Lifebane Zombie here.
I think you probably
and
have
I think
to.
you have, yeah, because you have to be cognizant of Grey Merchant.
Yep.
So now, if Tim has a Pack Rat, maybe we could start getting. Yeah,
Aha!
I thought he did. So
Yep.
Pack Rat can. It's a kind of built-in army here. There's 3 Detention Spheres already in play, and I think 2 Supreme Verdicts were cast this game. So let's see if Steve's able to draw an answer. Yeah. There's the. So 1 Pack Rat's going to get made. They're both 2/2s right now. Let's see, you draw a card. It's likely going to be.
Is that a Mutavault?
Ooh, it's a Mutavault, maybe.
I think you'd rather have that in play.
I'd rather have it in play, yeah. Because it could still pump the other rats in play, so you can still attack for 6 this turn, and then the Mutavault can be threatening lethal.
Yeah.
Oh wow! So he decides to just attack with both Pack Rats.
A little bit surprised by that. Mutavault's going to block here. Let's see. Okay,
Yeah,
there's
so
your block.
the block. Yeah, it is a Mutavault.
Hmm.
So he chose to make just a 3rd rat here. Exposes himself a little bit to Detention Sphere and Supreme Verdict. Obviously, having a Mutavault still in play would have been huge for him, but now it's a Jace, so he'll get.
Well,
it's making him sweat a little more.
Yeah. No bricks here for Stephen Phillips. All right, let's see if he's going to go up or down. He's going to go down.
I think Rivera's looking at the graveyard to see what his odds are here.
Yep.
3 Detention Spheres. He's got a Ratchet Bomb too, but Ratchet Bomb was too slow because those Pack Rats are 2/2s.
So Rev.
Wow, so there's a good one.
Charm.
Oh,
Verdict.
wow.
So how good is Rev right now?
Yeah, that's the thing. This is tough. This is tough because let's see what Tim decides to do. If Tim does, if Revelation, you can do Revelation for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
It would still be a lethal
Go
attack.
to 10, so it's still lethal attack. So yeah, it has to be Supreme Verdict. So yeah.
And he has to take Verdict.
Phillips isn't ecstatic about it, but then again, he isn't going to be able to deal with all pack rats, and Rivera doesn't have any cards left in his hand. So, and the Underworld Connections is already dealt with. So both players in top deck mode here. Let's see who can top deck first.
Except one of them has a Jace, and the other one doesn't.
Yeah. So, oh, that's right. I'm sorry, I didn't even see the Jace.
Yeah.
So Jace, at this point, you got to uptick. You can't just throw away your Jace again. Oh.
Oh no, he has a Thoughtseize. Yeah, might as well cast it.
Yeah, might as well cast it. There's an Azorius
All right, there
Charm.
goes Charm, and now there's an Arabos. That's actually a pretty good draw in this situation.
All right, so Arabos gonna start getting Tim back in it. He's gonna be able to draw a card this time.
And the reason that's big is because not only does it give him a card drawing engine, but it makes it so that Phillips draws a Revelation. He doesn't get to gain life, which is actually pretty important here. Yeah, he gets to draw a bunch of cards, which is great, but he doesn't get to gain any life. Here's an Elixir, there's a Plains, and now a Temple of Triumph. And we don't know what the card is in Phillips' hand, but he says, hey, here's an Elixir versus, do you want to shuffle those cards back into your deck?
Yeah, and the Elixir, like you said, he won't be able to gain life off. So he is going to be at 5 for the remainder of the game that Arabos is in play. So I think he has to, maybe he wants to take the Scryland to just sort of try to set up a draw for a following turn. That might be what he's thinking about. But yeah, the 3 Detention Spheres are in play right now. And I think there's a number of Azorius Charms in his graveyard too. So not many ways to deal with an Arabos if it ever gets active and attacks. So
the tough thing here too, if you're Phillips, it's like, do you actually want to have your Elixir be the bottom card of your deck?
yeah.
That's a real concern at this point of having that card be the bottom card. But Elixir right now doesn't actually do anything because it doesn't gain any life.
Yeah.
It just shuffles cards back in.
So I think he'd rather just be able to scry here. Looks like he just wants to get some information, see what's on top of his deck, and he is going to keep it. So
on top immediately.
Let's see.
Yikes!
I think Tim drew a Gray Merchant last turn.
Yep.
So Gray Merchant will be able to drain Steven for at least 3 right now if he chooses to cast it.
Draw a card.
Looks like a Swamp.
There's a Gray Merchant.
So Gray Merchant drains Steven for 3, dropping him to 2.
Devotion count higher too.
Devotion count now at 3, so he's 2 away from being able to attack with Arabos.
The big question is, what is that card that Stephen Phillips kept on top?
Yeah, he seemed satisfied with it. So let's see if it's going to help him out of this situation. He has that Jace, he can uptake it, but that's not going to be enough. It's a divination, so that's a start. Give him 2 extra cards here. He's really going to need a Detention Sphere, and along with an answer for. Well, Detention Sphere would be enough for now, but.
Normally, in most cases, Revelation would be insane.
Yeah.
But Arabos says that it's not insane right now.
So if he, let's see here, if he upticks, then he's not dead to just a Gray Merchant attack. But I think he has to. I think he has to revelate. Oh, you know what? I don't think he realizes Arabos' second ability. I think he thinks the Revelation is enough to win him this game.
Yeah.
Because you have to go for the Detention Sphere there. Yeah, I don't think he's aware of it. We'll bring up Arabos for you at home who don't know exactly what it does. But Arabos, as long as you have your opponents can't gain life. That's a key ability that some people forget about sometimes. And I think Steven is thinking that maybe the life gain from the Revelations will keep him in this.
And now here's a Thoughtseize to clear the path. And Tim has an Underworld Connections in his hand right now, so he can turn on the Devotion on Arabos to be able to attack for a lethal with the Gray Merchant and the Arabos past the Jace Cumberstone effect. So now he starts by leading off with a Thoughtseize to push this through. And I think Phillips realizes now, because I think he realizes now that, okay, I get to draw some cards, but I don't get to gain life off of
Yeah,
Arabos.
I think he needed to do it main phase to try to dig for a Detention Sphere.
Okay.
I mean, obviously he only has 1 left in his deck, but it's hard to beat an Arabos when one, your opponent's only 2 away from devotioning it, and he's going to be able to draw more cards in his turn to find those cards. So, yeah, Steven's in a tough spot in there. He really doesn't have.
6 cards drawn. There's a negate.
So there's a negate for the Thoughtseize.
He's only got 1 mana up.
He only has 1 mana. Connections turns on Arabos, and now Arabos is going to be enough, even through the Jace activation, to kill Steven.
I think he attacks, and that's lethal. All right, so Tim Rivera, after missing his 3rd land drop for a couple of turns, is going to tie this baby up. Mono Black Devotion versus a blue-white-red control. We're going to a 3rd one.
Yeah, so tough spot for Steven. I'm not sure if he forgot about the life, the fact that Arabos turns off the life gain or not. Maybe he just felt like, I'm going to hope that Tim blanks on being able to turn on Devotion for the Arabos, and my Jace Architect will obviously shrink the Gray Merchant, so I'll be able to stay alive. But that is a lot to wish for when your opponent's going to be able to draw at least, you know, 3 cards on their turn.
Yeah.
So, and basically almost every card, almost every permanent in Tim's deck would turn on that Devotion, short of a Pack Rat. But even if you draw Pack Rat off the first activation,
you can make a Pack Rat.
You should make a Pack Rat. You'll have enough mana to make one still. So, Tim manages to beat Steven in game 2, despite the fact that Steven did cast multiple Sphinx's Revelation.
Yep.
The power of Underworld Connection and Thoughtseize was enough in that game. Let's see what Steven is able to do in game 3 here. It doesn't look like he went to his sideboard. Both players, I think, are comfortable with their main decks now, so it doesn't look like either player is going to, you know, alter their sideboard strategy now that they're on the player draw. So,
yeah, I think both players are pretty happy. I think Rivera, you know, I don't want to say he was fortunate to steal the game. I think again, he's comfortable playing a longer game after sideboard. Arabos is going to have a huge effect. He's got a ton of discard effects as well. You know, he's able to put on a pretty nice clock with Desecration Demon and Life Vein Zombie, Pack Rat as well. You know, missing the 3rd land drop was not ideal, but outside of that, he really did a nice job of just, I think, pacing that game.
Yeah, I think Steven kind of just had a little bit of poor resource management in the beginning of the game there. He used, like, the Tension Sphere is just such a valuable card in this matchup, particularly post-board, because it's one of your few ways to deal with an Underworld Connections or an Arabos, which are basically Tim's only way to sort of keep up with the card advantage of your deck. So you really can't afford to use a card like the Tension Sphere on a card like Pack Rat, you know? Particularly because Pack Rat's really not that impressive in this matchup. You have cards like Supreme Verdict, which can clean up the board. So I think you're okay, particularly when Tim missed a land drop there. So you're really not under any pressure to sort of use the Tension Sphere that early on. And had he just passed the turn back, if Tim made the mistake and attacked with the Pack Rat, Steven could have just used Azorius Charmed on it and turned off another one of his draws. So I think the whole game changes if Steven just doesn't use the Tension Sphere on that Pack Rat.
Yeah, I agree with you. And we're going to see both players shuffling up here. Don't forget, at the conclusion of this game, we'll be having a winner's interview with whoever does win this 3rd and final game between Steven Phillips and Tim Rivera. We'll also be announcing our 12-month premium winner and then making our way towards our invitational coverage. So we got a long day ahead of us. We appreciate you guys joining us all Sunday long here at SCG Live. Cedric Phillips, Oslab Dodovich, and Matthias Hunt bringing you coverage all weekend long. Your tweets can be sent to at SCG Live or hashtag SCGINVI. Join in on the conversation, all weekend long as we do crown 3 champions today here in Las Vegas. And maybe have some fun afterward tonight, too. Who knows?
I mean, we are in Vegas, so.
Who knows?
And, you know, the funny thing is, on Friday, before the Invitational, we were talking about, you know, what are the key decks in this format. I think everyone kind of felt that Devotion strategies and Sphinx's Revelation strategies are really the 2 pillars of this format. You know, obviously aggressive decks like White Weenie have been gaining more and more popularity, but generally I have to think that the power of Sphinx's Revelation and the power of the Devotion mechanic are just going to keep butting heads the more and more standard tournaments we see, just because Sphinx's Revelation is just such a powerful card, and Devotion is just such a powerful strategy. So we also have the potential of seeing this exact type of matchup in our invitational top 8.
Absolutely.
You know, we could see a finals of Mono Black Devotion versus a blue-white based Sphinx's Revelation deck. So the 2 pillars of the format battling it out here in the finals, and it looks like the Sphinx's Revelation player is going to be down a card, at least 1 card here, because Steven is mulliganing to 6.
Yeah, Phillips immediately took a mulligan. Rivera pretty happy with his hand. I think most hands on Tim's side, are going to be keepable. Just lands and spells are probably good enough for him, because he knows he's going to be, you know, working his way into a longer game. While he is probably the aggressive deck in this matchup, he is not going to be able to get hyper aggressive in steal games very quickly. So just looking for lands and spells.
Yeah, after board, I don't think either player has to mulligan too aggressively. I think even with the blue-white deck, as long as you have lands and like a divination or a random action removal spell, you're probably okay. So Steven must have had a pretty bad opening hand for him to mulligan. But again, with 4 divination, his deck doesn't mulligan that badly.
Yeah, divination and doesn't mulligan very, very well. Phillips takes a look. He's happy. We begin with an Azorius Guildgate.
Might be the 3rd game in a row that we've seen that Guildgate lead off the game. Just like last game. 2 tap lands for both players, although Tim's does allow him to scry. So, and I believe he might have kept that card on top, or did he scry to the bottom?
I believe he kept it on top.
So he kept it on top. So he's going to draw his card for a turn. It looks like it's a swamp. And no play for Tim, so we're just going to see a cycled Azorius Charm here for Phillips. Phillips draws 2 cards. He does draw a Syncopate here, so he does have a counterspell. Let's see if he decides to play a Hallowed Foul and untap this turn. Maybe trying to bluff a Dissolve. So it looks like that's what he does. He's going to play 2 life, but nope, he does have a Divination. Okay. So here, despite a mulligan to 6, he looks like he's right back on top of things in terms of card advantage.
Yeah, basically mulligan undone. I think he just drew double Revelation off of that Divination. And now here's a Nightveil Spectre from Rivera. So first question presented from the Mono Black Devotion player.
So Tim has a Supreme Verdict, so he's going to use a Supreme Verdict on a Nightveil Spectre. I think Tim is okay with that. Tim looks like he drew a Pack Rat. He also has a Duress. And here's a Desecration Demon. So he's presenting these really obnoxious threats that Phillips is forced to use 1-for-1 removal spells on. And this is exactly what Tim's deck kind of needs to do. Let's see how Steven wants to navigate this turn. He does have an answer for it. He has another Supreme Verdict, so he's going to use it on the Desecration Demon.
No 5th land.
But no 5th land. So Rivera draws a 5th land for him, and he has a Duress now. He's going to lead out with the Duress.
Rev, Detention Sphere, Negate, and Syncopate are the cards.
Yeah, so 2 counter spells, 1 Negate, 1 Syncopate, 2 Sphinx Revelation, and a Detention Sphere. Detention Sphere, I wouldn't be surprised to see him just take the Detention Sphere and get that Pack Rat out there. Especially given that Steven missed his 5th land drop. Maybe put the onus on him to sort of
top deck lands?
Top deck lands, or have to rev for 1.
Yep.
So, yeah, it looks like he does take that Detention Sphere, and he's going to drop a threat here. Is it going to be a Pack Rat, or is it going to be something else? No, it's a demon, so he had another demon here. That is a big daddy threat right there. So, oh, unfortunately for Phillips, he did get a 5th land, but it's a Guild Gate, so he's not going to be able to at least rev for 2 here.
Jeez, and now there's another Desecration Demon, so we might just see Haymaker City. There's an attack for 6. Phillips is going to go down to 10, I believe. And I don't know, if you're Rivera, do you just drop another one? I think you do, because you know he doesn't have an answer. He doesn't have a He doesn't have a Verdict or a Sphere right now. He's already used 1 of each. Or you could play pretty safe here and just play Pack Rat and mix up your threats.
Yeah, I think you have to drop something out here, because you want to kind of put pressure on Phillips to consider revving for 1 here, to kind of dig for an answer. Obviously, and plus, if you play a second demon here, you expose yourself to Detention Sphere, whereas basically Supreme Verdict is the only card that can break up this kind of board.
Well, there's your rev for 1. Phillips is going to go up to 11. He draws an Elixir of Immortality.
Yeah, so another land here would be okay. Looks like he drew the Detention Sphere. So, again, good thing Rivera led with a Rat, not a Desecration Demon.
And the nice thing here is now it puts Phillips in a pretty tough spot, right? Like, what are you gonna Detention Sphere? Do you want to take care of the 6/6, or do you want to take care of the Pack Rat? Because Pack Rat can basically deal that 6 points of damage, and it looks like he is going to take care of the Pack Rat. Okay.
Yeah, well, he has to do something, because Rivera can just make a Rat at the end of his turn, and he'll be threatening lethal on his attack step. So he had to cast the Detention Sphere there. Now he has mana up for Negate if he chooses to. He did draw an Elixir. I don't think he needs to cast it, though, but he decides to just cast it this turn. Now he doesn't have Negate mana up. Desecration Demon is going to come over, dropping Steven to 5 and threatening lethal next turn.
Duress again going to clear the way. Rev, Negate, Syncopate. I think it's an easy rev there, because you can work your way through those counter spells pretty easily.
Yeah. So at this point, it looks like we're going to see a Gray Merchant come down. Wow. So Steven's at 1 now. And, yeah, even if he activates that Elixir, he won't have enough life to survive this combat step. So he's going to need a Supreme Verdict right now.
What's that draw? It's a Steam Fence.
Yeah, so let's see here. He can,
not enough. Tim Rivera, your Star City Games Standard Open Las Vegas champion. 4 Mono Black Devotion decks in the top 8. 1 gets through.
Yeah, and, we kind of thought the blue-white deck would have the advantage. And, game 1, you saw that. Game 1, Steven had his way with Rivera. But after board, Rivera's sideboard cards really paid off. Those Duresses and that Arabos, that spelled the difference for him in games 2 and 3.